How is it with heart rate stuff for you, Alex?
I don't really care too much about like what my heart rate gets up to. It's been a while since I've done any kind of, zone training. Because when I was doing it when I was running, I think with me, my heart rate just goes sky high anyways whenever I do any kind of cardio. So I started to basically just ignore my heart rate when I was running because I felt fine. It's just I would, be running and I was thinking, I was like, okay, I'm running at a sustainable pace, but my heart rate would be like 170. I'm like, there's no way, like 180. Like, there's no way I'm maintaining a 180 heart rate pace like throughout this whole run. I did use the Garmin for figuring out how long I was running, like distance wise. And I did notice like a big discrepancy between the Garmin versus like using something like Strava, which you can pair the two together. No watch is going to be totally accurate because it does use, things like GPS. And if you're running under tree cover, that can mess things up. So you just kind of have to pick your ruler and stick with it. If you're really using it for running, like maybe map out your run and see what the distance is so that you know for sure, like this is actually what I'm doing. Because there was a few times when I was running, I think I ran longer than I needed to run because my GPS like went out of signal while I was running. And then I don't know how it works, but it tries to pick back up and then it's like guessing. So
I feel like it did that one day because I remember you and I were like, running by the water and and I was like, sick, we hit 3 miles, I'm done. And you were like, I'm at like 2.7. I was like, well, that sucks to suck.
It was quite a big discrepancy between, and honestly, it was a little bit disappointing. I don't know how the Apple Watch compares, but and I remember going on Threads and Reddit and seeing, and yeah, people were saying like, yeah, the GPS, the Garmin, whatever the tracking, it's just there'll be some error, but it's just you got to pick your ruler and stick with it.
I remember like being at the CrossFit games and we were actually with our friend Rumblebum and she had an Apple Watch. I had my Garmin. And so we were like with each other all day and we were walking around. And so I remember looking at my steps and then looking at her steps. And it was like, I think I was at like 18,000 and she was at like 23,000. Back in the day, they just weren't as good. So I think that is the thing that you get with like the newest and latest, greatest model is things are going to be just more accurate than maybe kind of, the previous models and stuff like that. The other thing I would throw out too is like if you're going for the Garmin Phoenix, if you're going for the Apple Watch, even if you're not somebody that normally does Apple Care, because I'm usually that person, I'm like, nah, we don't we don't mess with it. He was like, do it because if you scratch the watch face and you need to replace it, like it's going to cost you, like you could almost like buy a brand new watch almost for the cost. I'm like, shit. They both have the sapphire technology. It again, especially with Garmin, it does cost I think like $100 extra, but like do it because I ended up spending more money because again, it was like I had 3 different watches. I hated all of them or I didn't like, features that they had or whatever it was. And so it was like, well, if you took the total of those 3 watches that I bought over the course of like, a couple of years, it actually totaled to the same exact price of if I had just like saved up and done it. And like I said, like if I'm going to buy something, I would rather have delayed satisfaction. I would rather like take the time, save up and buy the Cadillac or buy the really good thing. It was specifically the Garmin Venu. I think I literally scratched it. I didn't even have it like a week. And I had a scratch that went from the freaking entire like edge to edge and it drove me crazy. If you're trying to get a watch and you're on a budget, go look on Poshmark, go look on Mercari. Consider buying the previous model or just look if somebody's offloading it on some sort of resale. As far as actual prices, Apple can range from anywhere, I think it's 250 to the Ultra was 800. If you do want to get different wristbands or you want to upgrade them, again, that's going to cost you. What is Garmin pricing these days aside from freaking expensive?
Yeah, so I think with the Phoenix, it's going to be like 600,000, but then they also have the other models. So I think they're comparable to the Apple range, like 250 to 1,000. So both Apple and Garmin, I mean, they're competitors. So their prices are going to be fairly similar for functionality that they offer. So, and the thing about Garmin is they have a lot more options. It can be a little bit overwhelming to figure out which one to choose, but there's probably something for that meets your needs and within your budget.
And it really is too. It's just like get real about what features you're really going to use on it. People ask me like, "Oh, how do you feel?" And I'm like, "Dude, I don't use it for that feature." Like for me, it's really just like if I go for a run, can you GPS? Can you track accurately? Are you doing my steps? Way back in the day, I used to like nerd out over sleep, nerd out over all these things, and like miss me.
I mean, I'm not buying another watch because this one works perfectly fine. But I think in hindsight, if I didn't not have a watch, I'd probably go with the Apple Watch because it pairs with all my apps, and I don't need all the fancy stuff that the Garmin can do. So yeah.
If I was really going to dumb it down, it's like if you're somebody that you're like, I train for marathons, I love going hiking, I love doing like outdoorsy stuff. I'm hard on my watch in terms of like physical activity, swimming, all that stuff. Go Garmin, but Apple can still do all of those things, but it is just going to be a little aesthetically more pleasing and probably have more versatility in that way.